everything you think you know about Italian food as far as the history, it's all wrong. I definitely am very opinionated about Italian food history.
Well, you're opinionated, but also you have the research to back it up. Well, Zach,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. I'm really happy you're here. Got a lot of interesting questions, and I'm sure you've got some interesting things to get off your chest. Not that we have any...
My confessions of Italian food history, is that?
Italian food history, Italian culture, Italian blah, blah, blah. You've been here a long time, so you have your perspective from just as a resident living here, also an American, but also an academic who's actually dug into a lot of this more so than myself and previous guests who just kind of like, well, I feel like they don't drink enough water here. And it's like, well, I don't know. There's a lot of things.
Is there data behind that?
There must be, and I keep telling myself I'm going to look it up because I think they don't drink enough water here, but I don't know. But tell us a little bit about, and also for me, we've talked a bit in the past, but most of our conversations are very in the moment, which is fun. But it's in terms of your background, how long have you been in Italy? When did you come? Why did you come?
Okay, so in total, I've been here now, I think 18 years, but it was in two pieces. So I came to Italy in 1999, but I was up in the north in this little city called Bolzano, and that was too small. And then I moved to Vienna, and that was way too big. And Perugia was like the Goldilocks thing. Like the bed was just the right size.
Okay, so Vienna,
Yep.
which, for those who aren't aware, is not in Italy. It sounds like it is.
I would hope that the people that follow this podcast would know that Venice and Vienna are two different places.
That makes so much sense. The first time I thought I went to Venice, people were just eating sauerkraut and sausage everywhere.
So initially, what was I doing? In Bolzano, I was working as an English language assistant in a high school.
Okay.
In Vienna, I actually went to the university. I was thinking about doing a master's at the university, but it was just way too big. And also, I have a litmus test, and it is, if I ask people to pet their dogs, do they say yes? I'm not talking about the people who say, I know she's cute, but she doesn't like people, or she's scared, or she's abused, or she bites. I mean, just the general person who just says no. And I was shocked at how many Viennese people said no. I'm not sure if it's Viennese people or Austrians or just like people live in big cities. But that was like a bad thing. I'm a dog lover. So lots of people that said no, and I was like, oh, can I pet your dog? They'd be like, no. No explanation.
No.
So, but then I came down to Perugia, and it was just the right size. And I lived here for a long time and worked in a bunch of different jobs. But then at a certain point, I decided I wanted to get a PhD, which was a terrible life decision in some ways. But don't get a PhD, kids, if you want to work. Unless you're independently wealthy, then it's a really cool idea. But I did my PhD basically in history. And a lot of the history that I'm interested in is food history, or you could say environmental history, but a lot of food history, including some Italian food history.
Okay. So it wasn't totally Italian food history.
Ultimately, the program I did my PhD in is the Harvard's program in American Studies. And so I had to do some U.S. related stuff. So theoretically, I'm like a 19th century U.S. historian. Okay. But even there, I was always focused on stuff, like actual like stuff.
Okay.
The material world and how people thought about it and how it impacted history, not like presidents and stuff like that. I think my mother's still scandalized that I could not name the presidents from, I don't know, Andrew Johnson to like probably Woodrow Wilson. It's just a big blank area in my brain. For most historians 50 years ago, that was pretty bad. But I'm just not interested in that stuff.
Well, you've survived this long without that knowledge. I think, if you've learned one thing, it's knowing all the presidents is maybe not the most important thing.
I did a paper when I was living in Boston. I did a paper about beer. And basically, I had these records, and all of these guys, so in Boston in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you had to get a liquor license, but there was a lot of push to ban alcohol. This leads eventually to prohibition nationally, but there's a lot of push on the state level. And so what they did was they restricted the number of liquor licenses. So in the city of Boston, there were only 1,000 places you could buy alcohol. So all the breweries in Boston needed outlets. And so what happens was, if you were a working class guy and you wanted to open a saloon or a tavern or whatever, you didn't have the money to do that. These liquor licenses cost like the equivalent of like $20,000. You would go to a brewery And they would pay the money for you. They would give you chairs and glasses, but you had to agree to only use their beer, just their beer.
Okay.
And I found that these guys, these initial loans, they never paid them back. They didn't even really try that hard to pay back these big loans for the liquor license. But if they didn't pay for a month when they got beer, immediately they got sued. These breweries took them to court immediately. So I did this paper about like, why is that? And basically, it's like when Verizon gives you a phone for, I don't know, $100, but they want you as a customer. You got to sign on for like years and years and years. Same sort of thing. But in any event, the big question is always for me like, okay, I want to see stuff. Some historians are all about like ideas, which I think is cool, but I want to talk about stuff.
Right. The thing with the beer, the breweries in the U.S. and having contracts, it's kind of like coffee here, right? Any bar that opens to get their license, they do a contract with Ili or what's the one in Trieste, Hausbrat or whatever.
Right.
Where they have their branding all over the place. They buy only their coffee, they have a machine, and they probably have to stick to it for, I don't know, 5-10 years. In Italy, it could be like 20 years.
Yeah,
I know.
Could be. Your grandchildren have to use that coffee.
Right.
This system is called the Tide system, and you can't do it anymore in the States for alcohol. There's no bar that can sign a contract. They're like only going to buy, I don't know, AB InBev products. Can't do that anymore.
But you could do that with Coca-Cola, Pepsi, right?
I bet, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I think often when you see cafes or restaurants and they have that really nice refrigerator and it's all branded Coke, when the representatives come by, they're making sure that you got Coke products in that freaking fridge that they gave you.
Yeah, for sure. So you ended up in Perugia.
Yep.
And did you feel that there was like, how long were you in Vienna for?
So I was in Bolzano, that first city, for almost a year. I was in Vienna only for 6 months. After 6 months, I was sort of like, I've had enough.
You haven't been able to pet enough dogs.
I know it sounds weird, but it was both something that was a daily joy. For me, like dogs are basically joy. Like if you took joy, the idea, and you made it into a thing, it would be a dog for me. Like that is joy. And it was a lot of like joy I wasn't getting every day, but it also was like a litmus test for me. Like how cool are people? How much social interaction am I going to have randomly? I can walk into any cafe here and like make a joke and someone at the bar is going to laugh and make another joke. Italians are pretty cool about, okay, I don't know you, but we can have a quick laugh together, no problem. And I don't know, that weak tie, I think they're called by sociologists, that's important. And I just didn't get that in Vienna. I'm sure if I'd made more friendships, they would have been deep, but I needed the weak ones too.
I think people from the little bit I know about Austria, I think people outside of Vienna say that's Vienna culture. But that's like everywhere. It's like, well, that's how they are in Rome. That's how they are in Milan.
Exactly. Even Perugini are like, oh, we're so closed and, cold. And I'm like, but we're friends, so not really. Come on.
That's true. How have you found Italian culture in general when it comes to making friends here?
I don't think I've ever had a problem making friends. I mean, I think there's a certain class of Italians, not like social class, but there's a certain category of Italians that are just interested in hanging out with the people that they knew in high school. Fine. But there's a pretty healthy group, especially here in Perugia, that are all about having international friends and just learning about other cultures and even, God forbid, trying other food.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. We got into that a little bit with Andreas.
Oh, good. Really?
Because Italians, at least younger ones, from what he has seen, and I think I've seen it too, is the young ones are a bit more open-minded. Like they're more than happy to go get sushi. And maybe 20 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. But then they bastardized the sushi in a way that you could never do to their food. Like pesto and sun-dried tomatoes on sushi's va bene, but you put ananas on the pizza, it's like we're going to war. That's what I'm stealing his words, but...
So I just translated a book, a great book called The History of Pizza, La Storia della Pizza. And it was awesome. It was a lot of fun to translate. Really well done. It's by a guy who's mostly a journalist, but he did great archival research. So really, as a historian, I was like, okay, this checks out. And he talks a lot about pineapple on top of pizza. And he's like, this is fine. Like pizza has been changing since it was invented. It's never been the same thing. People put different stuff on it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like we're all going to live. I think one of my central ideas about Italian food, being a food historian, is like everything you think you know about Italian food as far as the history, it's all wrong. It's all either wrong or it's exaggerated. And Italian food in the past, for most people, sucked. It was awful. It was repetitive. It was monotonous. Led to malnutrition.
For most people in Italy?
Yeah.
You mean objectively it was not good food?
99% of people. And we can talk about different examples. For me, the best one is Torta al Testo, which is the bread. Perugia has two main breads, as you know, and it's the one that doesn't suck. Because we have, I hate to even say this for certain Perugians who might watch this, but I absolutely despise the pane sciapo, the unsalted bread, which we can get into the history of as well.
I talked to Nate about the pane sciapo a little bit. He's down with it. I'm not. But, you know, the history of it, we didn't get into it all because we don't really know.
I'm happy to talk
We are
about
told about a certain history of the pane sciapo, but is it true? I don't really know. All I know is I don't enjoy it. We had a question that you might know the answer to. He says the lack of salt isn't the problem with the bread around here. It's that it's dry. And I think I've seen that, but every time it's been dry bread, it's been unsalted bread. Does the salt retain moisture? And he's like, I don't know.
There's a great book called On Food and Cooking, and it's all about the chemistry of cooking. And I bet you dollars of donuts that book would say it, but I don't know. And I'm not enough of a food chemical guy to know.
Okay.
I think that's a reasonable hypothesis, but my problem is it's not hard, soft. It's really just the taste. I just don't like the taste.
There is no taste.
And it's funny, when you talk to most people that grow up with it, they're fine with it. But most people from outside of this area of all of central Italy that has it don't like it. And maybe, I mean, sometimes Perugians will say, or people in central Italy that eat this bread, they'll be like, right, but if you put like, fresh olive oil, in November, like prosciutto, it's great. And I'm like, I would eat an Amazon box with Umbrian olive oil on top of it. Like, you're not selling this. Give me a break.
That's true. Imagine how much better that bruschetta could be if it had salted bread.
This is another thing that they'll be like, oh, but it's so much better because it really exalts the flavor. I'm like, I eat prosciutto on salted bread and it tastes just fine to me. I'm not like, oh, this is way too salty.
Overpowered. Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa.
So for people who don't know, because I try to bring it back to people who are like,
right.
Where is Umbria? So we are in the region of Umbria, which is just below the region of Tuscany. Culinarily, is that a word? Speaking very similar regions. In this case, we're talking about bread that is made without salt, so most people who've been to Florence, when they bring you table bread and you try it and you're like, this is very bland. It's bland because it doesn't have salt. Why doesn't it have salt? What are the reasons? What do they tell us, and what's the truth?
So I actually brought props today. I brought this little set of books that I got. They were published by the region of Umbria, and they have foreign visitors to Umbria and what they said about Umbria. They have Umbria in poems, and one of them is the foods and wines of Umbria.
Okay, I'll get some pictures afterwards.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You get a close up.
This is like, I don't know, late 1990s. They put this out.
Okay.
And it talks about this unsalted bread, and it tells this story. So, Perugians tell a story, an origin story about unsalted bread. I should also say this story is very recent. We'll come back to that. The story they tell makes perfect sense, and it fits into this awesome archetype of David versus Goliath, sort of.
Real quick, you say Perugians tell this.
Yeah.
If you go on a tour in Florence, they tell the same thing. If I'm thinking...
There's a whole bunch of stories.
Okay.
None of which have any historical basis at all, which just links them.
Okay.
So, what is the story in Florence?
Well, it has something to do with like the Papal Wars, and there was a tax on the salt, and as a result, they were like, well, we can't afford to use salt because it's taxed too high, so we're going to stop using it. Fast forward to 2025. Why that is sustained, I don't really know. That's the extent of my knowledge.
So they also tell a story about the Pisans blockading the Arno. Pisa's at the very end of the Arno River. Florence is on the Arno, and theoretically they were bringing salt up the river. It makes perfect sense, just not true. Most of Florence's salt was from salt mines, not from the sea. That doesn't check out. Also, whenever they're like, oh, it's the Pope, and you're like, which Pope? And they're like, oh, a Pope. Well, there were lots of popes. And how did the Pope have control over the Grand Duchy of Florence? Like, how did that work? The Pope never owned Florence. The Pope did have, basically, because Italy before it was a united country in 1861, as you know, was all these little principalities, and there was a big kingdom in the south. And the Pope owns most of central Italy. So not Tuscany, but like what's now Umbria, the region around Rome, Lazio, some of Abruzzo. He owns a whole bunch of it, central Italy, and he's like both the Pope and also like the king, the elected king of what's called the Papal States. And Perugia's in that. But Perugia has these three cool things that they can do autonomously. They can mint their own money. I don't know if it was like the Perugian ducat or something. I don't know. They can, when you get tried in Perugia, like in a court, the judge is not a papal appointed judge. It's a hometown judge. Perugians could make their own judges, which is cool. And then also they could buy their salt from whomever they wanted. Now, I don't know, how much salt do you buy in a year? In a year?
In a year?
Yeah. I mean, in a box, how much salt do you buy?
I mean, it's probably volumetrically in a year.
A year.
Like this.
Okay. And like, so let's say a pound?
Yeah.
And how much does that cost you?
Oh, I'd have to ask. See, I have somebody that does the grocery shopping for me. I'm just so detached. No, I'm joking. Oh, I don't know. That's like a pound of salt is probably like 12 euro.
I don't know.
Maybe
like
less.
something
Less
minimum.
than
I mean, but
yeah.
like not a crazy part of your budget, right? If you go back to the Middle Ages, to the Renaissance, even up until like the 1800s, the salt tax was one of the main sources of revenue, not just for the Pope, but for lots of European states, because salt was expensive. It's a rock. It's heavy. It's hard to move. It's hard to get. Whether you're getting it out of a mine or you're getting it out of a salt flat, it's a lot of work.
And they needed it so much for preserving food.
Yes. So look at my thigh, right? I'm gonna hold my thigh up here just for a second. Now, if you cut off right here, you cut off right at my knee, right? I'm gonna ask you this question. I don't actually want you to answer. How many pounds of salt do you think it would take to cover my entire thigh?
I mean, how many pounds of salt?
Probably not 2, right? I mean, that's a decent amount of salt. You got to cover the whole thing.
And a lot of it would fall off. It'd be a lot of waste.
Yeah. You're going to have to like really mound it up.
Yeah.
Salt, like you said, was crucial for preservation. And they needed a lot of it. And it was freaking expensive. So the Pope had the monopoly. If you lived in like Terni or some other city in Umbria or in this papal states, you had to buy the salt from the Pope. Well, you know, when there's a monopoly, the price is really high. The Perugians had this ancient right from previous popes that they could buy it from the Sienese, people in Siena. The salt was better quality and was about half price. So they had this great advantage. In 1540, this all comes to a head. The new pope comes up and he says, look, I need money to battle the heretics. The heretics were, in 1540, the Turks in the east, the Protestants in the north, and anybody who didn't eat pasta every day for lunch. Just kidding about that last group. They were not.
Well, man, I'm fine then.
You're not a heretic?
I'm not a heretic.
He says, I need money, and so the salt from now on, you got to buy from me. So this actually happens. This leads to what's called the Salt War. And the Perugians tell 2 stories about this. One is true. They waited till the Pope left, and then they sent him a letter and basically said, we're out of the Papal States. We're going to be our own independent thing. We're definitely not paying that much for salt. It's going to kill our economy. We're out. So screw you. And they carry this crucifix from an old church near where the Brufani Hotel is now, up the main street in Perugia, and they put it on the side of the cathedral. And if you look on the side of the cathedral, there's a crucifix under glass, and it's called Gesù del Sale, the salt Jesus. And they also tell this story, the Perugians say, that's when we stopped putting salt in our bread. It was like a protest. It was like the Boston Tea Party, right? Americans are like, well, screw this. We're not drinking this British tea anymore. And they say to the Pope, cool, we're not going to put in more salt. We're not going to be part of the Papal States. The Pope sends an army up the Tiber Valley. In like the time it takes you to eat a plate of ravioli, the Perugians are totally defeated. It was like a 20-minute long battle. They get crushed. And the Pope comes in and takes over, and he knocks down a big section of the city, builds this big fortress that you know, the Rocca Paolina. And the Perugians continue to eat this crappy unsalted bread. Why? I never understood it, Anthony, but it sounded like a cool story, right? Like the Pope, he defeats them, but they ultimately have the last laugh because they don't eat the salt. Don't give them the money.
It's like, gonna laugh our way to our unsalted bread.
It's like a masochist's punishment for me, but And so they tell me this story, and it really made sense in the year
It makes perfect
2001. Except then I went to Florence one day. It's like a 2-hour train ride, and it was a completely different political. I mean, it was the Grand Duchy of Florence. It didn't have anything to do with the Pope. And they have this crappy unsalted bread too. And then I thought, that's weird. But then they tell you the story about the Pisans and the Pope, and you're like, all right, well, it's sort of like the Perugian story. But then I went to Abruzzo one time too, to Teramo with a roommate, and they had this unsalted bread there too. And I thought, wait a second, we're like hundreds of kilometers away from Perugia. The Salt War didn't happen here. What? So I thought, okay, I got to figure this out. So I called every single provincial tourist office in Italy, and I made a map of where people drink, or where people eat salted bread. And it's just the whole center of Italy. But it doesn't line up to the borders of any administrative political state in the past. And so I did some more research, and I won't bore your listeners on the historical sources, but basically from the records of the hospital in Perugia, they had their own bakery, and you can tell that Perugians have been eating unsalted bread since the 1400s. So like 140 years before this Salt War. But the other weird thing is, if you look at books from the 1950s, 60s, there's no mention of this story at all. This story about the Pope being the reason that they eat unsalted bread here is from the 80s. I couldn't find it anywhere before the 80s. And as soon as one cookbook publishes it, boom, it's everywhere. And everybody in Perugia will tell you that about the Salt War. Yeah. And it makes sense. Like the salt, it was expensive, the Pope, but it's not true.
But why don't they do it now? Why don't they put salt in the bread today?
Did you eat Peter Pan peanut butter when you were a kid, or like Jiffy or Jif?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I remember, I did too. I remember the first time that I ever had European peanut butter. I think it was Calvé, which I think is from the Netherlands.
Okay.
I remember eating this peanut butter, and I was like, ugh, this tastes like peanuts. Because American peanut butter is like palm oil and sugar, and there's a little bit of peanuts ground up in it.
Probably some caramel color to make it brown.
Yeah, exactly. I love Peter Pan peanut butter. When I go home, I have at least, I try not to have too many because it's all freaking sugar, but I'll get like legit Wonder Bread, like that crappy. I'll get that. I'll get Jif or Peter Pan, and I'll get strawberry jam, and I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Can take the man out of the U.S., but can't take U.S. out of the man.
Got it. I grew up with that. And I think the unsalted bread thing is the same thing. I think they just grew up with it, and it's in all the stores, and like, if you grow up with it, you sort of like it. I don't know. Like, I think it's the same reason I really like the chili, like it's made in the United States instead of how it's made in Mexico.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's just that simple. Oh, and I want to talk about torta al testo.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Yep.
So torta al testo.
So this is the unsucky bread in Perugia. It's the bread that is
so good.
As a foreigner, you're like, oh, so you do eat decent bread. You do have unsucky, good bread.
Yeah.
And I've always found it a little bit awkward as far as a container. And you know, in Perugia, sometimes they cut it up in little strips, but a lot of the times you have like, I don't know, should I describe it, or do you want to describe it for your audience?
Well, I can describe it as somebody who's more recent to it. Torta al testo is like a big circular thin bread that looks... It's like I guess it'd be like a flatbread, and it's thin. It's about this thick, maybe an inch thick, but it's dense. And it's usually often served as a sandwich where they cut it thin-wise and fill it, kind of like a thick pita. It's not like pita at all.
And it's awkward because it's like a pizza slice-shaped wedge.
It's always a triangular-shaped sandwich that they call torta al testo, which I've talked about this before. I don't want to get into it too much again, but it's like, it's a sandwich. They would say, no, it's not a panino, it's a torta al testo. They define it by the bread, which I went into a lot with Andres. If you get what we call a sandwich, they define it by the type of bread. So if you get a torta al testo, it's this bread with the fillings in that. Or like you said, they serve it in strips as like table bread for prosciutto and formaggio and stuff like that.
So this torta al testo, which literally means cake on a tile, although cake in Italian can be both sweet or savory. So I thought, okay, well, here's this unshiny bread. There's got to be some cool history of this. And so I started digging, and I was very surprised. And it goes back to all the things you think you know about Italian food history, or all the things that Italians tell you are wrong. Also, anything you read in a cookbook about history, wrong. Cookbooks are great for recipes for food. not usually for histories of products. So I did some research on the Torta Testo, and I thought, well, what is the history of this? And I find out first, okay, this idea goes back to the Romans. It's no new idea that you have some circular thing that you heat up in a fire, and then you spread usually unleavened bread or unleavened dough on top of it, and it rises. So you have the Romans.
1 second for this
sure.
truck to pass. This happens
A
rarely.
lawnmower? What the hell is that?
I think it's a street sweeper.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
All right, we're good.
So this is not a radical new idea that you take something flat that'll hold heat and you heat it up in a fire and then spread unleavened dough on top of it, and then it rises. Usually you flip it. The Romans had this. They had terracotta discs that they heat up in coals, and then you spread the stuff on top. And the Umbrians do this too, and a lot of people all over Italy do this for centuries. Poor farmers didn't have the nice cast iron disc that we use, and they didn't even have terracotta. They used stones, just field stones. They try to find something as flat as possible, and they cure it in fire so it wouldn't explode on them. And they would just take the stone, put it in the fire, heat it up, and then they would spread the dough on top, and they would put coals on top of that. And then they'd, like, when it was more or less cooked, they'd pick the coals out. So you had a lot of ash mixed in. But the thing that was surprising about this is when I got back to old recipes, it wasn't made with, like now, if you look at the ingredients, it's like wheat flour, water, eggs, salt, Parmesan cheese, olive oil. If you go back to the old recipe,
In the Torta al Testo,
that Torta al Testo, you might have eggs, you might have olive oil, there might be Parmesan cheese mixed
Wow.
in. Not a ton of Parmesan cheese.
it's a little bit.
A little bit. The big difference is, well, there's three differences. Number one, how they made it, right? So we already talked about they didn't have the disc. They were putting it on stones in a fire, not on top of your range top or in an oven. Number two is the ingredients. So if you go back even to the late 1800s, it's not that long ago, 130 years, Italy does all of these big parliamentary inquests, which means they send politicians around and they interrogate farmers and say all kinds of stuff. But one of the things they ask is, what do you eat every day? They come to Umbria and they say, what do people eat here? And they find out people are eating what they call torta al testo, but it is not this wonderful, delicious dish. It's basically polenta.
Okay.
So you got water and you have corn flour, maize flour for your European listeners. It's made with corn flour. And it's not this nice thing you can split. No one's splitting anything. They're cutting it in wedges and they're putting stuff on top. But so that's another big difference is there's no eggs, there's no salt, there's no Parmesan cheese. It's very different. Also, how often do you have torta al testo? You like it, right?
I mean, what time is it? 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. No, I have it probably at least a couple times a month.
Yeah,
I love it.
me too.
It is the best go-to bread here. For those of you listening, you can get salted bread here. That's not torta al testo. It's not going to be the table bread they serve at a restaurant, but you can of course go to the supermarket and get it. But if you want to be safe and not have to look up what types of bread are salted, torta al testo will not disappoint. It's just dense. It's not like a fluffy one that will soak up a lot of olive oil. It's more dense. You can do that, but yeah, I eat it a couple times a month.
What do you get on it? Do you have like a go-to thing?
If I'm doing the sandwich, I'll do herbe salsiccia.
Nice. My favorite too.
Yeah.
It's sort of, they tell you here, a classic combination. We'll come back to that. But you can get it with other stuff, right? What are some of the other ones you have sometimes as far as filling?
Salame picante pecorino.
Love it.
Sometimes just melanzane and what are the
Like
best?
grilled veggies.
Grilled veggies?
Yeah.
Grilled veggies, or it'll be, if I get it just, as a tagliere, it'll be that, and I'll put, prosciutto on it and some formaggio. So just kind of basic.
When you get here, they say, oh, you should have it with salsiccia erba. So like sausage, and the word means literally grass, but it's like greens, right?
Yeah.
Like spinach. The interesting thing is, if you look at this parliamentary inquest, they're eating torta al testo, but they're eating it with like beans. Sometimes they have raw onions. And they say in this inquest, it says the best off Umbrian farmers have it twice a day with some potatoes on top. The best off farmers. The rest of the people are eating it, sometimes with greens, but it's not like spinach and stuff like that they've cultivated. These are field greens. They're basically wild edible greens that people are boiling and putting on top of it. Okay, so the third difference, talked about two. How they make it and what it's made out of, it's a totally different thing. I mean, the name is the same, But if you look at the ingredients, 1800s, corn flour, water. That's it. Today, wheat flour, salt, alba. The only ingredient that's remained the same is water. That's it.
And it would be unrecognizable.
In the 50s, Anthony, you can find recipes where they say, when Italy's just finally making the transition from the war-torn economy to the economic boom of the 1950s, they say use as much wheat flour as you can afford and as much corn flour as you need to. So it goes from like 100% corn, 0% wheat over a 40-year period to 100% wheat, 0 corn. But you can find these intermediate recipes that are like, if you have to use wheat corn flour, use some. But then the third thing is the meaning. So like when you talk to Peruvians or Umbrians and they tell you about torta al testo, like how do they explain what this is?
How do they explain to me?
In the sense of like, what is the meaning to them? In the sense of like, they present it as a traditional food.
Yeah, they say this is typical Perugino. They wouldn't, even if you're in like Foligno, they would say, this is something from Perugia.
Right. So it's like this classic thing. We've always eaten this. Our grandparents ate it. Which, if you say, did their grandparents eat something called torta al testo? Yes, they did. But the third thing that's different is the meaning. If we could like magically have an Umbrian farmer, of course, that farmer would probably be a sharecropper, from 1870 here with us today, and we said, hey, what do you think about torta al testo? Do you like it? They would say, no, are you kidding me? I eat that shit twice a day. Oh, really? You don't want to eat? No, I don't want to eat it ever again. And in fact, we see as soon as Italians get to the post-war boom, the consumption of corn flour falls right off a cliff. They can't even measure, the National Statistical Agency can't even measure how much corn flour people are eating because it's like 0. Because people are sick of it because they eat it all the time.
Yeah.
So the third thing and the crucial thing, and this is a lot of Italian food, was there something in the past? It wasn't like Umbrians just invented, or Peruvians invented this food called torta al testo. They didn't. People ate this thing, but it wasn't the same thing. Not only were the ingredients different, the meaning was different. If we could have that farmer here and we'd say, hey, how do you feel about torta al testo? They'd say, it sucks. Are you kidding me? I never want to eat it again. Tell us, who are the people that eat torta al testo? They'd say, poor people, malnutrition people that get freaking pellagra, which is a niacin deficiency, because they eat too much corn flour. So like, the name is the same. The way you cook it is completely different. The ingredients are completely different. And the way people think about it. Now it's just like warm, fuzzy, this is our traditional.
Sure.
There was a thing that if you had a sagra, like how would you call that? Food festival? How would you define
a food festival, which sounds cheap and carnival-y, but food festivals in Italy are very important.
Oh, yeah.
And it's every year. They look forward to it every year.
There was a law in Perugia, I think in 2009, 2008. It's in the paper that I wrote about this. They basically said, if you're going to have a food festival in a municipality of Perugia, if you're going to have a sagra, you have to serve torta al testo because that's the typical thing. Someone from 1870, if we could have that person here, would not even understand that. Like, why are you forcing this crappy food of poor people on us? We hate this food.
And we'll get into pizza. But
yeah.
Would they say the same thing about pizza? Not somebody from Umbria, somebody from, for example, because pizza was like it was a poverty food.
That's a great segue to pizza. There's definitely a class thing there. It doesn't last too long, actually. So pizza's born in like the late 1700s, early 1800s in Naples, which was the biggest city in Europe. Yeah. Or like it was like London, Paris, Naples. What? Yeah. Huge city. Nobody has a kitchen. If you're basically like lower than middle class, which is most of the city, you don't have a kitchen. You have a place to live. You may have like an outdoor toilet, but there's no kitchen. So they have to eat street food. And one of the things that people eat is pizza because the kingdom of southern Italy, the kingdom of Naples, to keep protests to a minimum, they subsidize the cost of flour. So flour is cheap. Plus, people get a lot of what I think we call bycatch. So a lot of little fish. When you go out to do fishing in the Bay of Naples, they get all these little fish. And they have really high quality vegetables from the area around Naples. Put all that together. What do you get? You get freaking pizza.
But the original pizza which I, of course, learned from Stanley Tucci. What's it called? Exploring something Italy.
Taste of Italy or
Taste of Italy. Great show. Then when he went to Naples, what they said was that the pizza fritta was the OG pizza. Is that true?
There's definitely pizza fritta really early.
Okay.
But they're doing it in ovens too.
Okay.
And originally, pizza is made by bakers. And only like in the early 1800s did they specialize where you start to have records of pizzerias. And it's cool because you can reconstruct all this history from police records.
Okay.
If you wanted to have a place of business that had a fireplace or had a fire or an oven, the police had to come and inspect once a year because they had to make sure that that fireplace was big enough for the fire that you had. It didn't have a whole bunch of creosote. So from police records of these inspections, sort of like it's like a combination health inspector and building inspector. They come through and they check. And so from these records, we can figure out when the first pizzerias opened up. But early on, you have these pizzerias and they're doing a couple different things. One thing they're doing is making a lot of cheap pizza. Initially, without the tomato sauce is way down the pike from the original pizzas. The original pizzas are like focaccia. You have this flatbread and you got all this cheap bycatch from the Bay of Naples. You got all these little fish. Most of the original pizzas were just some fish on top, maybe a little bit of sunya, which is like lard from the belly of a pig, because they had a lot of that. And then maybe some vegetables from out in the countryside.
What year are we talking?
Late 1700s, early 1800s.
Okay.
You already got these pizzas. They call it pizza.
Wow.
So they're making it and they're doing a couple different things. They make a bunch of them and then they got a kid, literally a kid, who has this round container. Underneath it has coals to keep it warm. And up on top, they have the pizza cut up into slices. And he goes out and he sells it all around in the streets. And there's tons of people that they don't have kitchens. They got to buy stuff on the street. That's one thing. But then they also start pretty early, at least in the 1840s. Think about a classic restaurant that has like booths that are divided by these high walls. They have that in Naples. So you could like go out and eat. So this is the people that are above working class, like lower middle class people could go out to eat when restaurants are not super common and have the pizza come to the table and they'd all divide it up. So like what we think of as going to the pizzeria, that was a thing. And pretty quickly, by at least mid 1850s, you already had this class stratification. If you're like a super poor dude working at the docks, you're going to buy it from the kid. And if you buy a day old pizza, it's pretty cheap. If you're like a lower middle class person, you could go out with your family or your colleagues and have a pizza in a pizzeria. And there's usually a kid that'll come up from the wine shop next door because they couldn't sell wine usually in the pizzerias. A kid will come up and say, hey, I'm from the wine shop next door. Do you guys want a bottle of wine? I'll bring it to you. So you could like go out and have dinner. So pretty quickly, pizza, it's like stratified. Buy it in the street, you're poor. Go to the pizzeria, middle class, and then you even have like delivery for upper class people. But initially, pizza is associated with lower class people, so it takes a little bit of time for it to become like something that aristocrats would eat. Or kings and queens.
So pizza delivery, did that start in Naples?
Yeah. You have delivery pretty early on. It's not a big thing, but there is pizza delivery.
In early 1800s.
Let's say mid 1800s.
Mid 1800s.
Yeah.
Did they have like the thermal container where they kept the pizzas warm, and did they ask for tips? And
I don't know. I mean, you have the kids already that have these kids that are going around with these round metal containers where the bottom has all the coals. So like you already have the thing
so
that's
they
going
were
to keep it warm.
walking around with those?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it like a cart?
I have to go and look at the pictures of it. Yeah. So
like the kid would walk around with hot and ready.
Yeah.
Which must be where Little Caesars got their motto from. Hot and ready must have come from these kids in Naples 200 years ago. So he would literally walk around and be like, extra, extra pizza. And he would sell hot pizzas. And then when it became a delivery thing, you're saying that was the mode of delivery, or did it go from it was made in
delivery is never a big thing initially.
Right. But they were making eventually they were making in a pizzeria and bringing it to somebody's house.
Yeah. You can get like if you're someone that's a little bit higher social class, you can have it delivered to you.
Wow.
By the kid. But the cool thing is, I think you know this story. There's the famous pizza in Italy.
Yes.
Okay, tell me the story.
Oh, gosh.
Tell me the story that you've heard about the pizza Margherita, and then we'll go through it.
Queen Margherita visited Naples because she watched Eat, Pray, Love, and she really wanted to.
She loves Julia Roberts.
She loves big Julia Roberts.
Exactly. They both had red hair. Yeah. You got it.
No, she went to Naples and they created this pizza that had the colors of the Italian flag, which was the tomato, the pizza rossa, the mozzarella was the white of the Italian flag, and the basilico, the basil, is the green. Colors of the Italian flag. We present to you, to the queen. Come ti chiami? Ah, Margherita. Ah, we call this the Margherita. And here we are.
It's such a good story.
It's so great.
Like, as a historian, I'm like, that has beautiful narrative power. There's also this archetype of the monarch who like wants to actually like hang out with the people, right? So I'm going to tell the story again, and then I want to tell you about my research.
Yeah.
So the story is that, first of all, there's a basis of fact here. You have a peninsula that has all these little states and a big kingdom in the south, and then you have these aggressive assholes in the north, the Piedmontese.
Those jerks.
And they basically take over the rest of the peninsula. So Naples goes from being the capital of a big kingdom in the south, the Kingdom of Naples, to being a provincial city like any other. It's still a big city, but it's not, they don't run things anymore. This is 1861. Fast forward 1889. The king of Italy, who at that point, his name is Umberto. Umberto comes down with his wife, Margherita, and Margherita's up in the palace at Capodimonte, and she's so sick of French food. She's like, if I have another consomme or beef bourguignon, like I'm going to just throw myself out a window here. She calls in the chamberlain and says, hey, what do people eat around here? What's good? I want to order out. And he's like, well, people eat this thing called pizza. She's like, pizza, what the hell is that? And he's like, well, summon the best pizzaiolo, the best pizza maker of Naples, who is Raffaele Esposito.
And he was open on Google Maps, they called him.
Of course, they did Uber Eats. They just had it
delivered. Yeah, sorry. Of course.
By the kid with the steel contraption. So they summon this guy up to the Capodimonte Palace, and they say, make us some pizzas. And he makes 3 different kinds. The first one has anchovies, and nobody likes pizza with anchovies. It's just a fact. Other than me, I love anchovies.
I love them.
Margherita didn't, though.
I knew I didn't like her.
So Margherita doesn't like that. Then he tries another one that has garlic on it. Garlic in Italian food history is called the spice of the poor. So she's like willing to hang out with poor people, but there's limits, you know, doesn't like that one. But then he makes this third pizza that you described, tomato sauce, pieces of mozzarella, and a little sprig of basil in the middle. And she loves it. And Esposito, she says, what is this called? He says, it's called Pizza Margherita. And there it is. It's such a great story.
It's so great.
But Anthony, you know what? I love to tell stories, and outside of academics, I'm unbound by the need for truth. Just don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right?
I think we can end the podcast there. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. I heard this story and my bullshit detector went off right away. Or my great story that's probably not true detector. I was like, I would tell that story. That's a great story. That cannot be true. It just happens to have the colors of the Italian flag. Are you kidding me? And it's like the north-south, like finally they're like brothers, right? The northern queen is like, oh, I'll have a pizza. I thought, this is just bullshit. This has to be. So I dug into it. Then the only real document that attests this thing is in a pizzeria. You can go see the document. It's very faded at this point. You can find copies online. Pizzeria Brandi, where they have stupendous pizza. It's so good. And on the wall, they have this record of, it's a letter, purportedly, it has a stamp on the top, royal seal. And it's from not the queen, but the chamberlain of the queen. And the chamberlain says, thank you so much, Raffaele Esposito Brandi, for these 3 pizzas, which the queen found delicious. You know, we thank you a million. The queen loves you. Goodbye. And I saw this. I'm like, well, I mean, there's the proof. But then I thought, well, that's weird. Like the seal at the top is like not centered. And it's like kind of off kilter a little bit. I was like, oh, that's a little odd. But also, the chamberlain addresses this letter not to Raffaele Esposito. He addresses it to Raffaele Esposito Brandi. Brandi was his wife's last name. In Italy, wives don't take their husband's last name. And husbands definitely don't take their wife's last name.
Are you kidding?
I'm like, that's weird. Anyway, long story short, this is a fake letter. I found this Chamberlain who was a real person. I found letters from him in the archives, and his handwriting is completely different. This is a fake letter, probably in the late 20s, early 30s.
Wow.
Is my guess. And it's just a fake. And it builds on earlier stories of pizza-loving kings that would go down. They would dress up as commoners and go down. It builds on these stories. But first of all, it's not true. And also, the pizza with basil and tomatoes and mozzarella is eaten way before 1889, which is when this supposedly happens. This is unfortunately the reason I can't go visit Naples anymore, because they have a fatwa against me.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've seen your picture all over the place there.
Got a price on my head and on my ginocchia. My knees. Yeah. My knees broken.
They'll bust your kneecaps down there. Man. Well, that makes me wonder, is the lock of hair from Diego Maradona in Varnillo, is that real? Or is
This is a great question. I've never understood soccer or football.
I didn't either. I'm also a published author, Zach. I don't know if you know this. I wrote an article for Hostel World describing the history of Diego Maradona and about why people should go to Naples. And because the first time I went to Naples, I still don't know anything about calcio, about soccer.
Okay.
Had no idea who this guy was. All I knew was I saw his face everywhere.
Yeah.
And he was like next to Padre Pio. He was a saint. I'm like, what is going on?
Didn't he play in like the 80s too? Like it wasn't like he stopped playing like 10 years ago.
He played for Naples, I think, from 86 to 91 or 92. And he brought them their first Serie A victory. He put
like
them on
cup
the map
or whatever.
Yeah, he literally, as you know, Naples used to be this, behemoth of a city, success, wealth. Then it just declined, and then all the infrastructure and commerce and money in Italy favored the north, and Naples just became like the armpit of Italy, and they just, threw all their trash down there and said people from Naples are cavemen and all this stuff. So Naples just felt like they've just been kicked to the curb endlessly, and then there were rumors that the best soccer player in the world was about to leave Barcelona. He's from Argentina. He was playing for Barcelona.
Right.
He didn't end well there. They had some dispute. And there were rumors that he was going to come to play for Napoli. And literally families would be around the kitchen table praying. And when it was announced he did, they just broke out in tears. I mean, it was insane. So he's just, and I didn't understand any of this history. I didn't understand, why does this matter? And then, when you dig into it, you see he wasn't really the best guy.
Great soccer player.
And he put them on the map. So I didn't understand, why are kids in Naples, why do they have this guy's name on their back? And then I understood why, and I appreciate it now because of what he did for the city.
All right.
All of his character flaws aside, he gave Naples meaning again. I'm going to cut that up as much as I can so I don't get people from Naples coming to kill me.
They're going to come kill me. I'm like taking apart the seats of Margherita.
We'll just cut all this out.
Yeah, the whole Naples part should be like, and then Naples, do you have anything to say about Naples? No.
It's amazing.
Nothing to say about
Margherita, it's named after the queen.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a great woman, too. Wow.
So when did they start putting tomato on pizza?
So that's not right away. But you get that like I think in the 1848, there's some account of pizza and they talk about tomatoes. But the tomatoes is not sauce. This whole idea of like the basis, like the base of pizza can either be white, you can just have cheese, or you have tomato sauce, which is like the standard. Like if you asked a little kid to draw me a picture of with crayons, draw me a picture of a pizza, they would definitely put red there.
Of course.
The original standard is white, you just have some cheese and then something else. And this is another thing I'm going to have a fatwa put on it. The pizza, the argument in this book that I just translated, and he's pretty convincing in it, the initial use, like widespread use of tomato sauce is from the States. He has this beautiful beginning of the book where he's like, imagine a woman who emigrates from Italy to New York. She's Italian and she comes back like in her 70s. And, she's still speaks Italian, but it's with an accent. She does things different. She remembers things different. So like Americans see her as Italian and Italians see her as American. This is pizza. Pizza goes abroad, and when it comes back, it's different, but then that gets adopted everywhere. So like the pizza that Italians eat now, sure, it's related to pizza that people are eating in Naples in 1840, but by way of New York and the East Coast.
And the tomatoes themselves largely came from South America, right?
Tomato is the domestication is between Peru and Mexico.
Okay.
It's difficult. That's a really complicated story, but they're putting tomato slices on in Italy, in Naples, but it's not this ground up tomatoes. That comes later because you have people in New York that are making it, but they don't have the fresh tomatoes. But they're importing tons of Italian products. In fact, the Italian economy for a long time is a lot of the exports are to Italian, either Italian Americans or Italians in Argentina. The pasta industry, canned goods like tomatoes, olive oil, there's a ton of that industry that's built up because they can export to the diaspora abroad.
Well, it's a good thing that's not at risk, exporting and...
Right, with nothing like customs duties or tariffs. Things
tariffs,
like that.
Yeah, it's an antiquated word. It's like groceries.
God. That's the most beautiful, yeah. So you have Italian Americans in the States. They don't have access to these tomatoes. So
what time period are we talking about?
We're talking like last decade of the 19th century, so like 1890s, but then like 1920 through 1950. They're importing Italian tomatoes.
So the tomatoes went from
it's crazy
South America to Italy,
Yep.
where they're cutting them up and putting fresh tomatoes on the pizza,
Yep.
not a sauce.
Yep.
They're
Coming back
exporting
across.
those,
Yep.
coming back to North America as whole tomatoes in cans.
Yeah, I mean there is some like fresh tomato production in the United States
Sure.
in the early 1900s, but it's nil. I mean it's nothing like today. The crazy thing is, okay, the Roma tomato is developed by the University of Maryland, despite the name. And so if you ask in time, where's the Roma tomato from? I mean, logically, you would say Rome, right?
Sure.
No, it's developed at the University of Maryland, but it's just a really good sauce tomato. So tomato, there's a great article about the tomato going back and forth across the Atlantic. And there's some really cool Chinese stories but the map is like this. It's not one directional. The Columbian Exchange, when all these products come from the Americas to Afro-Eurasia and the other direction, it's not just this like two like arrows going this way, arrow going this way. It's weird back and forth. Really weird back and forth.
So, okay. Tomatoes go back to the U.S., go back to the Americas, to U.S., New York area. They're taking these and saying, we don't have fresh tomatoes, we have these canned ones. We're going to make it into a puree, into a sauce.
Blend it up.
Put that on pizza, popularize it. Obviously, this isn't what they planned out. This is what happened.
Yeah.
It became popular there. And then
it goes back.
Via Italian immigrants going back. And then they bring it back and they're like, what happened to the tomatoes?
But also the cinema, like movies are part of this too. Because if you go, I mean, I have a 83-year-old friend here, professor of anthropology, and he told me one time, he said, there was never a pizzeria in Perugia until like the 70s.
That's crazy.
Pizza can barely get outside the walls of Naples.
But it goes 5 on this one street.
Exactly, but it goes across the Atlantic. So pizza arrives in New York before it arrives in Florence. And I don't know how that works, but people in other parts of Italy already had their flatbreads. People in freaking Perugia had the Torta Testo. People in, I don't know, further north had the what's it called? The credenza or whatever. And so you have this weird thing that pizza goes all the way over, but then it comes back, and it largely comes back driven by movies. People are looking at pizza in the movie and be like, oh, that looks cool. The pizzerias spread in Italy in like the 70s and 80s. You can go and look at like the Yellow Pages of Perugia from 1970. I challenge you, find me a pizzeria in Perugia.
That's insane. Okay.
Now, if you tell Italians this, they're going to kill you. If you say your pizza is basically what they made in New York in 1935, they're going to break your legs.
But Italian Americans will love this, and half my audience are Italian. Most of my audience, the most popular city that sees me, at least on Instagram, is New York. So this is perfect.
People in New York are eating a regional variety of Italian food. People, I don't know, Italians are like, oh, that American fettuccine alfredo, all that stuff, spaghetti with meatballs, that's a bastardization. You can call it whatever you want, but like people eat different versions of Italian food in lots of different places. That's just a regional variety. I mean, if you look at the map of Italy, there's this thing called Sardinia, which is not contiguous to Italy, and they eat food that's different. But everyone's like, well, that's a regional food because it's politically part of Italy. The East Coast of the United States is not politically part of Italy, but it's just a regional dialect of Italian food. No value judgment. That's just what it is.
It's what it is. It's what my ancestors brought over in 1920 from their culture then. Now, 100 years later, it's got its roots then. Of course, it's changed in the U.S. because of available. Like, for example,
as has Italian food in Italy.
Italian food in Italy has changed. For example, chicken is so much more widely available in the U.S. and not so much in Italy. Yes, they eat chicken here. They don't eat nearly as much as we eat in the States, which is why you have the chicken cutlets. That's like a whole thing in New York that here is like weird. The chicken on pasta, which objectively there's nothing wrong with that. You can't. I'm willing to listen, and I'll read all the comments of people who get into the science and the taste and the texture, blah blah blah. Chicken and pasta don't go well together. I don't buy it at all. I'm open to being proven wrong, but I don't buy it. It's only because the chicken is not as widely available here, which they don't put on pasta. It's a separate thing. But they'll make a ragu with meat sauce and put that with pasta all the time. There's no problem there. It's just because in the U.S., chicken was more widely available. So having chicken on pasta, it's good. Who cares? Who cares?
You've hit upon something that actually happens in history, and you've nailed it. And there's a great historian of different food traditions, but of Italian in particular. She has a book called Hungering for America, Hasia Diener. She's at NYU. And she has these 2 chapters, and one is on what Italians ate in Italy before emigrating, and then what they ate in the United States. It's an awesome pair of chapters, but she has this concept of carnification. So let's just jump back. Do you like steak?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How often do you eat like a thick, nice, big, thick steak in a 3-month period?
Less than most people, more than my ancestors would. Probably like once a month.
Okay.
Twice a month.
If I quadrupled, I'm not going to ask you how much money you make in a month. If I quadrupled that amount, would you eat steak more often?
Maybe a little bit. Not really.
Would you eat meat in general more often? Would you eat out more often?
Yeah.
Italian immigrants, the people who emigrate, they aren't like, you know what? I just want to see someplace new. I want to go somewhere and never see anyone that I grew up with again, ever. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, I'm so freaking poor and I eat so badly that I'm malnutritioned. No one is eating freaking chicken cutlets back in the old world. Most of the people that emigrate because they're dirt poor, they're malnutritioned, and they hate it. They're at the bottom of this really rigid social hierarchy where they're just like the untouchable caste. They emigrate to the United States and to Argentina, other places too, but the United States is the one I know best. And all of a sudden, they're like 4 times as rich. They got all this extra money. And what do? Because in Italy, they were functionally vegetarians for most of the year. Most Italians, for most of Italian history, have eaten meat on Christmas, Easter, and for the 10 days during the harvest, and maybe the saint's day of their town. That's it. And the rest of the year, they never eat meat. These people emigrate. All of a sudden, they got all this money. They're sending money back. They're spending more money, but they still got money left over. And so they're putting meat in everything. Finally, they can have meat as often as they want. So you get spaghetti. Well, let's put freaking meatballs in it. Let's roll up meat. We're going to make that. Let's put meat in that too. This super abundance of meat, and in specific chicken, but not just, is because all of a sudden you can add meat to whatever you want, and you freaking do. And that gets passed on to your kids and your grandkids, and that's you. It's the meatification, carnificazione.
Carnificazione. Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought about that. Talking about food going to the U.S. and then coming back to Italy. Carbonara.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I've heard that came from American soldiers in Italy that were like, we have access to all this pasta, but we want a taste of home, or we only know how to make, let's see, what do we like? We like eggs and we like bacon, and now there's all this cheese and pasta. Let's just mix it together. Is that true? Is there any truth to that?
How political can I get on this podcast?
As much as you want.
Okay. So I personally despise, what's her name? Liz Cheney. Really, if you made a list of 20 policy positions, I agree with Liz Cheney on 0 of them. Actually, I agree on 1, and that's democracy. Liz Cheney, for me, is an amazing person because she doesn't just risk her political future. I mean, she immediately got beat in her next, after she went against President Trump, she immediately got beaten in her next election. But when you're an American and you're that in the news and you defy Trump, I mean, any day of the week, we could wake up and hear the piece of news that Elizabeth Cheney was shot in the face with a shotgun outside of her house. I mean, you got to have a lot of courage to do what she did. And that's why I'm trying to summon up the courage to say that carbonara might not be Italian.
Oh, God.
There's a great book by this guy, Alberto Grandi, who's a professor of food history in Parma. Like, this is not like some joker or like a blogger who's like, oh, I heard from my neighbor that. This is a guy who studied the sources. And he makes this point about Italian food. And he says, look, it's not like these things like torta al testo never existed before, but what people are saying about them now, oh, this is our tradition, this is what we always ate, this is what everybody ate, is baloney. After the Second World War, Italy has this huge boom, and the first thing they do is just dump all the old food. They're like, oh, let's have tang. Yeah, tang, that's cool. Screw oranges, let's have orange concentrate. Let's have like things in tins. Let's have things that come out of cans. No one's like, oh, let's preserve the way grandma made. No. They're just jettison that. But unlike Germany and France and Britain that are able to like modernize their economies really, Italy just in the late 70s and 80s, it just doesn't work. And they're sort of figuring out, okay, we're not going to be able to base our economy on high tech or being super modern. And so they sort of fall back. This is Grandi's argument. They fall back in this whole tradition thing. They're like, oh, remember we used to do this thing? And they go back and recover these things from the 1930s and 40s and blow them up and pretend that they were what everybody ate. In any event, for carbonara, this is like the thing that, of all the things we've said today, this is the thing that's most likely to get us, if not killed, at least our knees broken when we exit this building.
Be a good story, though.
I mean, I don't know. I like my knees the way they are.
Yeah.
I'm happy with being able to walk.
Give me 10 more years with these knees.
I also, after I broke my foot last year, I learned that living in a walkable city is awesome until you can't walk. Then it kind of sucks.
Kind of sucks, yeah.
In any event,
don't come here, people. You don't want.
Yeah, you don't want to come to Perugia. So carbonara, this story also seemed to me it just was too easy. You have these Americans that come to Rome, people have pasta, and the Americans in their rations have bacon and eggs. I mean, what is carbonara? It's bacon and eggs plus pasta. That's it. And I thought, no, there's no way that can be true. That's too like, it's like American-centric. The Americans make carbonara. It pisses off Italians. And yet, Grandi goes and looks, and he says, if you look in recipe books, if you look in travel logs, people go to Rome, they're like, oh, here's what I ate. Nobody mentions carbonara. There's no mention of it. The first recipe you can find is 1952 for carbonara, and it's published in Chicago. And 2 years later, in 1954, you get a recipe in Italy. 2 years later. This is 7 years after the end of the Second World War. And Grandi basically says, the thing that is the obvious solution to this, where does this come from, is American rations plus pasta. That's just the obvious thing. Where was the highest concentration of Americans and American troops in Italy post-war? Freaking Rome. Where's carbonara from? Rome. So,
coincidence?
I mean, it's an interesting question, but like if you want to get all hysterical about, I shouldn't say hysterical, if you want to get worked up about it, and you want to be a nationalist about it, blah, 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 that's one thing. But if you want to look at the historical sources, these people that say carbonara has been eaten forever, cool. Show me the primary source. Show me the recipe. Show me the menu. Show me the person who mentions it in a travel log. I looked at a book that was published in 1958 this morning to prepare for this podcast. Given it's by Americans. They go all over Italy, and they have a chapter in every region, and they talk about Umbria. And I thought, okay, cool. Let's see what they talk about. And they talk about some stuff like porchetta. They mention this wonderful sandwich that you have, slices of baked pork. But they don't mention penne alla norcina, this like wonderful pasta dish with truffles and sausage. No mention of that. There's no mention of fish from the lake. There's no mention of torta al testo. They talk about risotto from Montefalco. I'm like, risotto?
What?
I know. And they mention another dish from Spoleto that it's sort of like penne alla norcina because it has truffles, but it's basically like a pretty soupy sauce, and there's no dairy products in it. So like, okay, we can say maybe these foreign visitors to Umbria didn't get the whole story, but one of my research projects for the future is to go back and look at all these Umbrian sources. What are people eating in the 50s and 60s? And there may be some things like unsalted bread, but I think a lot of the things that we think of now as like classic Umbrian dishes just weren't. Maybe they were around, but like 1% of the population had them, or it was like the thing that you ate that one day.
Truffle being an example.
Yeah. I don't think these were daily things.
Zach, what is real anymore? What's the truth? Like, arancini, do those come from Sicily, or did those come from, the Florida Keys?
The thing is, it's okay for food to change.
No, it's not.
Italians that are fixated on we have to eat everything like our ancestors ate, well, then go eat freaking polenta twice a day for most of your... I mean, if you're fixated on it, I can show you the sources that show that your ancestors ate this stuff. Like,
can you say that in Italian just to give some credibility?
Cioè, se volete comunque mangiare quel che hanno mangiato I vostri antenati, possiamo anche fare, però non vi piacerà. You're not going to like it.
No.
Because it's boring and you're going to get a freaking niacin deficiency. It's going to be horrible. That also ties into vampires. We can go there if you want to. But, I mean, foods change. It just do. And people who tell you that they don't are just wrong. And people who sell food products or who are nationalist politicians are not usually good historians. Historians suck at most things. Historians are not good at predicting the future. In fact, if you want a prediction, ask a historian what's going to happen in the future. Whatever they tell you, it's usually the opposite. Historians suck at predicting the future. They're not good at making free throws. They don't describe living people very well, but they're not bad at talking about what actually happened in the past.
History matters.
Yeah, and also like history, like sometimes it matters and sometimes we can just do things differently than our ancestors did. It's okay.
Back to touch on the carbonara thing real quick. If you need any more evidence that maybe it came from the U.S., I'm gonna put a graphic up on this for the clip. Carbonara is pasta. We'll call it bacon, for lack of a better term. Formaggio, cheese, and egg. Bacon, egg, and cheese, pasta. Take away the pasta, add a biscuit. What do you have? A bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, I don't need to say anything
There are
else.
like these fierce debates about whether or not you can put onion in amatriciana, which is like a pork bit. I like it with onion. I don't care if people ate it with onion 50 years ago or not. I just like it with onion. It's okay.
The standard recipe doesn't have onion, correct?
I mean, depends on who you ask for the standard.
That's right.
Also, like, what is the standard based on? I don't know. I just remember I had these 3 super boring Marchigiane roommates, these 3 women from the Marche region of Italy. And 2 of them were from the same place, and the other one's from like the other end of the Marche, which is like 80 kilometers. We're not talking about, 50 miles.
Yeah.
And I didn't like any of them. And so I would occasionally just be a provocateur, I think is the word. So I'd say, what's like, how do you make like a really good red sauce? I remember this example particularly. And the 2 of them would be like, oh, well, you start with you have olive oil and you very gently saute a clove of garlic. And the other one's like, yeah. And then you take the clove of garlic out before it gets burnt. You don't want to burn it because that just ruins it. And then you put in some tomato sauce and you cook it lightly. And then right near the end, you put in just like a little dollop of balsamic vinegar. And the other one was like, what? Balsamic vinegar? That ruins it. And the other 2 were like, no, it doesn't ruin it. Like, you have to have it. Oh, no. It was like debating the Holocaust. I mean, it was like this crazy thing where you're like, people were mad and like, that's false. No, how could that ever be? Crazy stuff. One ingredient.
I've never heard about putting balsamic in the
Oh my
tomatoes.
God.
I'm sure it's fine, but
You have to. The two were from the north of the market were like, of course you put in balsamic vinegar. You have to have that. That's the tradition, Anthony.
where does this passion come from? There are other Mediterranean countries that have comparably good food. Greece, Spain, Portugal, maybe France. I don't. They don't have this attachment to their food and they're passionate about the food like Italy. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to say like, you have better shit to do than to worry about culinary nationalism. I think part of it is just, although maybe you could say this for Greece or Spain, like Italy doesn't see a future that's modern. And so if you can't look forward, you got to look back. If you can't see a place your country's going to this glorious future, you have to look at the glorious past and fixate on it. And the thing is, most people aren't historians. So most people are not going to debate you on it. Oh, this is the way we've always made this thing. How do you know?
Yeah, and then they're going to watch this podcast and realize that the glorious past is based on a farce. So it's like, what?
Can I tell the vampire thing?
Yeah,
This is
what?
okay. Maize flour, corn flour, if you eat too much of it, you get a niacin deficiency. So when the Europeans go to the Americas, they see indigenous people making corn flour, but they always put in a little bit of ash from the fire into the water. And the Europeans are like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh no, you got to put this in, makes it better. The Europeans are like, oh my God, these dirty indigenous people putting ashes in the lye in the wood ash, and I don't understand the chemistry of this, makes the niacin in the corn flour available for your body to absorb. If it's not nixtamalized, this is the name of the reaction, if you don't put the lye from the ash in there, your body can't absorb the niacin from the corn flour. So the Europeans take the corn back, but they don't take the ash thing back. So all these people in southern France, in northern Italy, in the Balkans, are eating tons of corn because basically the landlords that own all the land are saying, okay, in the fields, you guys got to put wheat because wheat we can sell for a really high price on the market, but you have to eat corn. You can't eat anything else. Like you can have your little garden and you can eat corn, but you can't eat the wheat. The wheat we're going to sell. So people in northern Italy, I mean, polentoni is what Italians call the northerners, right? They're always eating corn, even though it's not true anymore. People in the Balkans too are eating way too much corn, but it's not nixtamalized. And so when you eat too much corn, you get this niacin deficiency. Your body can't absorb the niacin. What happens when you get niacin deficiency? You get a disease called pellagra, which is basically non-existent anymore. But the American South, actually, lots of people, poor people in the American South had it. You get pellagra, first you get your gums recede, and then they start to bleed. And then you get really light sensitive, and then you go crazy, and then you die. This is the progression of pellagra.
Today we just call that a video gamer.
Yeah, exactly. But if you think of those symptoms, your gums recede, so your teeth look bigger. Your gums are bleeding, so you have blood in your mouth. You get really aggressive with people, and you are light sensitive, so you gotta stay out of the light. I mean, all you need to do is add a distaste for garlic, and you have a vampire. So there's a really cool academic paper, which is a sentence that's never been said before in English. Really cool academic paper. I'm the first person to say that.
What, is that Greek or something?
But this paper basically says the origin of the folkloristic figure of the vampire is just describing people with pellagra. Because these people just went nuts. And they were bleeding out of the mouth and they were light sensitive. Like, that's a vampire. Anyway, so you have these deficiencies in the past because of over-reliance on corn flour, and it leads to vampires, basically. Right? So cool.
So, okay. Whoa.
So don't eat just corn. And if you eat just corn, make sure that have some lye in it so you can absorb the niacin from it.
Good to know. I'll have to
note that down in your notebook.
I'll have to tell my grocery shop.
Yeah, right. The person who shops for you.
The person who shops
your
for
personal
me.
shopper.
Okay. There's some other things some things I've noted that this is all great. This is way more than anybody is paid for.
I'm glad to hear it. Normally, people don't give a shit about what historians say, so it's exciting to have an audience.
But when you add Italian food and the passion that comes with it and the debate
Fighting. People are passionate about this stuff. They get mad about
Italians, Italian Americans who feel like they need to punch up a little bit to be like, no, we brought this to you,
Spaghetti with meatballs is a regional cuisine of the 21st region of Italy, which is the East Coast of the United States.
Which is where you're from.
Yeah, Rochester, New York, baby. I went to Cerami's Italian Villa, which was in the Wingate Plaza. It was between an auto parts store and I think a toy store. And they served, I'm talking like 1980s, they served bread with tons of butter. I never saw olive oil there. Maybe they had it, never saw it. And we would go and I would have spaghetti with meatballs. My dad would have lasagna. My mom would have baked ziti. That's what we'd have. Nobody ever ordered wine. There were pictures on the walls of Venice, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Colosseum. There were
Rat Pack.
Absolutely.
Of course.
There were candles stuck in like Chianti bottles. I mean, it was like, that was what I thought was Italian. I thought that was Italian.
I'll say for the record, I love all of that.
Me too.
I'm so at home in a place like that.
I went back like 3 or 4 years ago and they brought a little plate and they put olive oil on it, which nobody here does. And I was like, man, where's the butter? I mean, break. I wanted
I like the olive
garlic
oil.
bread with the butter.
Speaking of the olive oil on the plate, they're so passionate about food here. And I have a friend who I'm not going to mention by name, but if she's watching this, she'll know.
Chiara, it's you.
Chiara. We went to dinner. It was a bunch of us, and we got some unsalted table bread, and they brought the olive oil, some plates, and I had the bread, and I was pouring the olive oil on the bread and putting some salt on the bread, and she's like, no. Pour the olive oil on the plate, salt in the olive oil, and then you dip it. She's like, let me show you how to do this. And I'm like, friend, I'm 32 years old, and you're telling me how to put olive oil on bread. I get there are certain things that you do right and we do wrong, but this is the most basic of things. Let me have this one method of doing it in reverse order. It's like, oh, you made that sandwich upside down. It's like, come on.
I have a friend who gets mad when I criticize unsalted bread. And I'm like, everything else you got, like, give me one thing that is not, like, you gotta have one thing that sucks. I'm sorry.
One thing.
Yeah, just
and
one.
half the people here would agree that it's not good.
And anyone who didn't grow up with it, basically, will agree with that.
Yeah. And the ones that did grow up with it and have since left this town, like, yeah, it's not good.
And even people from this zone of unsalted bread will usually be like, well, I like salted bread too. And I want to be like, well, yeah, duh, because it tastes good, because it tastes like something. Lord.
Okay. I want to touch on the Mediterranean diet.
Love it.
Is it the best diet in the world? And is it real?
So I am not an epidemiologist. It seems like the diet in and of itself, like if you're living in Denver and you live, I don't know, 30 miles out and you have a 2-hour commute every day and you're working 60 hours a week and you don't have social relationships with people around you and you smoke, like you can eat as much olive oil as you want. That ain't going to change your heart. So the diet by itself, epidemiologically, it doesn't seem like it changes a whole lot. The lifestyle, more. If you're eating that diet and you also, like us, are walking like miles a day up and down hills and you walk by, I don't know, the cafe and you like say hi to Riccardo.
Ciao, Riccardo.
Ciao, Riccardo.
Riccardo, come stai?
Ci vediamo domani. It seems like the diet plus the social context and like the geographic context, the topographic context of like walking and doing stuff. But I'm a historian, so like I can't weigh in on the diet. If you ask me, is the diet real? I'm going to take that question as, is this a diet that most of the people around the Mediterranean have eaten for most of time? That's an easy no. Like, first of all, Mediterranean, right? By last count, the Mediterranean had a whole bunch of countries around it, half of which are Muslim and have been for centuries, if not millennia. Well, they weren't drinking a glass of red wine every night. Also, like, one of the things is meat. Among the meats are pork. They weren't eating pork either. I don't know. Also, if you look at the diet It's basically, and this is why it was invented by.
And real quick,
Yeah.
I'll just say,
Sure.
as my basic, if I were to open up a magazine like Mediterranean diet, what do they say? What would Giada de Lorenzo say? The Mediterranean diet. Buy my book, buy my pre-made sauces. This is from a specific region in Italy that I've never been to. It would be pasta, fish, olive oil, fresh vegetables, light meat consumption. Again, the fish, a lot of fish.
Some
small
legumes.
portions.
Some legumes.
Yeah, beans. Very little bread. If it's bread, it's like whole grain. Not a lot of fried stuff. And it makes, really pretty pictures for magazines and Pinterest and stuff. And it'll let you take the picture with the big pants, like you're 2 sizes smaller and everything like that.
And it's good. Like, that sounds like a lot of good food that I want to eat.
It does. And they've been eating like that in Italy for hundreds of years.
So where
allegedly.
Do you get the Mediterranean diet? It's from an American, Ansel Keys, who basically invents it in the 1950s. He's the guy, I don't know, have you ever heard of K rations for the army?
Yeah.
Ansel Keys invents the K rations during World War II. So Ansel Keys looks at people's incidence of heart disease, and he finds that people that eat this diet in Greece and Italy and some other places, he does a little cooking of the data, but basically they have lower incidence of heart disease. And he's like, why do these people have so much less heart disease? And he says, it's because of this diet. Again, I don't want to get into epidemiology of it, but he is looking at what Italians, especially in the South, are eating in the late 50s. I think his book comes out in 57. What's the story? Italians in the South in the 50s are just starting to have more money because of this economic boom. So they can finally afford a little bit of meat. So the low proportion of meat in the diet is not because they're like, to be healthy, we want to have less meat. No, they're just like the Italians that emigrate. They want more meat. And in fact, as soon as they can afford more meat, they do eat more meat. People in the South are not like, you've been in the South. Are they like, we need to stick to our traditional diets and we're not going to eat? No, they want a freaking steak like the rest of us. But they still, so they have a little bit of these modern things that they can afford, like meat and fish. People live in the interior, can't really afford fish until the 50s. But they also are still eating a lot of vegetables and legumes because they have to. Because they have more money than they did 10 years before, but they don't have enough to leave the legumes out. I love legumes. But I eat legumes once a month. I don't make that many soups with old-fashioned peas, these ravella. I love them, but I eat them once a month. People in the 1950s in the south of Italy are eating a lot of legumes because they have to, because they can't afford that much meat. They need to get protein from somewhere. So basically, Ansel Keys, who's not a historian, he's a nutritionist.
Sorry.
He takes a snapshot of Italian food in the South in the late 50s, and he thinks that's historical. And it's not. And the thing is, before that, 40s, the 30s, people aren't eating that diet. They can't afford meat. And even after that, already in the 60s and 70s, people aren't really eating the Mediterranean diet anymore. It's this snapshot that's back projected. But it's cool, these bronzed Italians that are on the beach and they're eating grapes and a little glass of wine and not too much meat. It's like the diet we all want to, and smoking, of course. Well, that's very healthy, actually. It helps you burn the calories or something. So no, it isn't historical. It may be good for you, but it seems like the most recent research, as far as I can understand it as a historian, is you can't just have the diet. You got to have the things that we love every day too.
Yeah.
Walking, interacting with people, seeing your friends just walking through the streets.
Yeah. I think the docu-series, the Blue Zones or whatever it's called on Netflix, did a good job of hitting all these points, because you think these blue zones with all the, what are they called, centenarian?
Yeah, the 100-year-old.
Everybody, the first thing they think is food. American food is all processed, Mediterranean, Italy, Sardinia. It's all the food. That's one of the 6 pieces of the pie, or 8, whatever it is. It's everything you just described. It's daily exercise, old people walking up a ton of stairs just to run their errands. This is what they do. It's being social. It's taking care of the elderly and the social benefits that come with that. It's all of these things. It's a slower paced lifestyle. It's taking breaks. It's all these things.
There's a guy that goes to the Cafe Turan in the main Piazza Perugia. I see him probably once a week there, and especially in the warmer months, usually we'll have a little chat, or he'll pay for my cappuccino, I'll pay for his. His name is Paolo. He used to be a director of a bank here in Perugia. He's probably in his early 70s, and he gets up every day, and he lives down a little bit down the hill. He like walks up and, you know, gets his paper, comes over, has a coffee. I bet he has like another place he has a coffee later in the afternoon. But like, I don't know. I've never invited him to my house for dinner. He's never invited me to his house for dinner. I mean, our tie is a weak tie. But I think I'm one of the 20 people that he talks to in the day on that like weak tie level to like, I don't know if it's like dopamine or there's something in the heart. I don't know what it is, but I really saw that in the pandemic, where I used to go into the history department I worked in and I'd see Mary McConnell every morning at like 7:30. It was just the two of us in the building. And I'd always go in and be like, Mary, what washes up on very small beaches? And she would say in a Boston accent that I cannot replicate, she'd say, Zach, you're not funny. And I'd say, Mary, you know what washes up on very small beaches? Microwaves. And that like 30-second interaction, Anthony, really, during COVID, I just didn't have that anymore. And it was like, Mary McConnell was one of the 20, 30 people I would have that interaction with. There was a guy that at JP Licks in Harvard Square, the coffee shop, and I used to say, he'd say, do you want a medium, right? Like medium roast, medium size? And I'd say, yeah. Can you put a little bourbon in it? And he would just laugh every time I said, he was like, oh yeah, I'll put some bourbon in it. That, whatever that did, like that's part of the Mediterranean lifestyle that you and I enjoy every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And it's way more important than olive oil for me.
Yeah.
I like olive oil, but I don't think it's the whole thing.
No, it's again, it's one piece of the pie. But if you are that guy who's in suburban Colorado driving and smoking and having that lifestyle, the Mediterranean diet probably is better than what you're eating now. But it's not gonna add 20 years to your life if that's the only change you make.
I'm trying to eat less. I'm trying to eat less sugar specifically. And so often on the weekends, usually I'm trying to restrict the cornetto, like would you call it croissant? How would you?
Well,
sort of.
I would, just for simplicity, but Italians would disagree.
Of course they would.
And I think you probably know this. Didn't Italians just steal that from France and just change the recipe a little bit?
Seems like it to me. I wouldn't be shocked about that. But like, I'm trying to have fewer cornetti, especially filled with, I love it when they have Nutella in them.
So hard not to
right?
eat those. When you walk by a pasticceria in the morning and you know they just made them fresh, and when I smell that, I have to stop.
So I have, my favorite thing on the weekend is to get the print version of the New York Times, International Edition, sit at the Turan like Saturday or Sunday morning, and I like put the paper down, I put the coffee on the chair next to me, so the whole top of the table is just the New York Times, and I read the New York Times. And what I usually do is say, well, I'm going to have a cornetto with Nutella, and so you know what I'm going to do? In my cappuccino, I'm going to put dolce picante. I'm going to put sweetener, artificial sweetener. I'm going to do a sweet and low instead of sugar. And I remember there was this sassy Brazilian server at the Turan, and she was like, Zach, you know that like it's kind of absurd. You have this cornetto that probably has like 5,000 calories worth of Nutella in it, and you're like, you know, you're not putting in the 50 calories of sugar. She's like, give me a break, buddy.
Give me a break. I'm trying.
But I think that's the guy in Denver who's driving 2 hours a day, but he's like, oh, I'm going to have some olive oil. Like, that's a little bit me where I'm like, I'm going to cut down on my calories from sugar.
Yeah, that guy's pounding sugary coffee all day, having like a lunch al volo, and then eats a huge dinner with beers at home.
Yeah.
That's
I hate beer.
Beer is just not good. Why do they keep, everybody talks about it, they won't shut up about it.
Beer is the thing that I wish I could like less, but I just don't. I just really like beer. I even like lager in big bottles that don't cost that much. I like that beer just as much as I like artisanal IPAs.
I just like a cold beer.
Oh, my dad always used to say he had two favorite kinds of beers, cold and free.
Yeah. Anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to?
I want to talk about my next project.
Okay.
I do. This is advanced publicity for my next project. I'm working on a book right now that has nothing to do with food, hardly, and definitely not Italy. But after that, I want to do another book that I pitched to my agent 6 months ago. And she's like, drop your current project and do this. I can get a $20,000 advance. And I was like, are you kidding me? She's like, oh, Zach, I can sell this in a second. A People's History of Wine.
Okay.
So most histories of wine, first of all, talk about like, Baron so-and-so who invented the recipe and it was this wonderful wine. Most wine in the past sucked because people didn't know how it was made. They didn't know about yeast. They didn't know why things came out wrong or tasted. Also because most people didn't drink good wine. You would harvest these grapes that were growing up trees because there was no high tensile steel wire. So you'd have all these sharecroppers. Their goal was not to make really good wine, which you make by limiting the amount of grapes. Their goal was to make a bunch of calories for their kids. And so they wanted to make as much wine as possible. So they just grew grapes. They grew them up trees, which didn't mean the sugar content was really high. You'd take the grapes and harvest them. And the landlord got the first press. So the wine juice, the must, that was really decently high sugar that made decent wine, totally without, added yeast, not with any chemical procedures. That wine, which today would be the crappiest wine we'd have, the best wine in like the 1850s was for the landlord or for export or for consumption by rich people. They would take all of the leftover stuff, like all the grape skins and the, pieces of the grapevine and repress it. So you'd get the second press, which is pretty low sugar, and they would ferment that. Well, lots of times the resulting wine was very low alcohol. So it was good in a way because you weren't going to get drunk. You could drink it all day and you weren't going to get drunk. But the bad thing is a really low alcohol wine goes to vinegar really quickly. So like most Italians and most Mediterraneans who were drinking wine for most of history had drunk the shittiest wine ever. It was awful. It was basically vinegar. So they called it vinaccio. They didn't even call it vino. That accio, as you know, in Italian is like a suffix that means bad little. So they're drinking this crap wine because that's all they had. So like the history of wine is not these amazing wines. The Romans like would water it down like the Greeks. The Greeks watered it down with salt water. Can you imagine taking a bottle of wine and cutting it 50% with salt water? Jeez. The Romans would put spices in it to cover the shitty taste of vinegar. Wine in the past was completely different. And so I want to do this People's History of Wine. And first of all, tell what wine really tasted like how was it to taste wine back then? But also like tell the stories of the people who freaking made it, not the Baron up in the castle who never clipped a bunch of grapes off a vine ever. But like, what was it like for people making wine, the regular people? So that's my next project. We'll talk in 2 years.
Yeah.
Can I come on the podcast and promote the book?
Of course. Anything else you've published that where people can find it? Books?
Sure. I just published a book on Italian food, but it's too expensive. It's like $60 and it's like a summary of Italian food. But the thing that I would recommend if people have had fun with the stories I've told today, there's a whole bunch of stories in a very accessible format. And it's for a cool series published by Reaction Press in Britain. And they have a series called the Edible series. And it's basically the name of a food or drink followed by the words a global history. So like pancake, a global history, lemon, a global history, rum, a global history. And they're very varied as far as quality. I would like to think that mine is a decent one, but like some of them I've read are just awesome and some of them just suck. Like really are poorly written. But I wrote Truffle, a global history because I lived in Umbria and like people ate truffles. And I thought before I came here, truffles were like these little candies that had, caramel and nuts in them. I didn't know. I remember telling an Italian like, oh, my grandfather loves truffles. And she was like, your grandfather ate truffles? I was like, yeah, every Christmas we used to get him a pack of them. And she's like, wait, do you mean a mushroom or do you mean a candy? And I'm like, candy, of course. What are you talking about? I didn't know what truffles were before I came here.
I didn't either.
But I wrote this book and it has some of the best stories that I found, including a really cool one about how the truffle saved Provence. And that book's probably, I don't know, you can get it used for $7 or $8 on Amazon.
But you can find it. You can find a new copy on Amazon?
Yeah. Truffle, a global history. It's still in print.
Truffle, a global history. All right, I'll link to it.
That'd be great. I love that.
Yeah. And if people want to reach out to you for anything,
yeah,
it's the best way to contact you.
Probably, I don't know. My Harvard email is the one I pay most attention to
Okay.
in the off hours, and that's Z Nowak, ZNOWAK at fas.harvard.edu.
Okay. I'll put that in the description, all that stuff.
Historians don't get a lot of fan mail, so people like either want to write me angry things or they want to like have copies of my academic papers. I think most of them are decently accessible. They're not too boring.
And you've published both in Italian and in English.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Some of my stuff's in Italian.
Okay.
Most is in English though.
Okay.
And most is like, can I make a food pun? Bite-sized. Sorry. It's like not too long.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect for people.
Cool.
And I'm sure that there are people, I know some people who are very into the food, that are very into all these details, that might hopefully reach out to you for an expert on looking at the next level in, because everything with Italian food culture and history is very complicated. It seems so simple, but there's so many layers to it, as we've seen with this.
People that make food or people that advertise food are not the best historians of those foods in general. And sometimes you get like the carbonara, you get a story that just seems too pat and like too easy and too, it seems fictional, but it isn't. But most of the stories you hear about food, like, oh, and the first ice cream cone was made because they're at the state fair in Iowa. Most of the stories with like a single origin, like a single person, like the queen, they just aren't true. It's a good story.
Yeah.
It's just probably not a true story.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. Spoiler alert. If you made it to the end of this episode, you might be feeling a bit down, but learning is...
I think only my mom is going to make it to the end. Thanks, Mom, for watching the whole thing.
Yeah, mine too. Thanks, Mom.
Sorry I said the F word so many times.
Yeah, I can bleep it out.
Can you make a version just for my mom where it's bleeped every time?
I'll just parentheses mom version.
I'll send her that link. Thanks, Mom. Sorry. I had a beer, so, you know.
Yeah, you know what happens. But you're not driving home, so it's all good.
It's true. I'm walking home.
Walking home.
I'm going to walk right by the guy. I'm actually going to the butcher to get a nice piece of meat where I'm going to put it in the oven tonight.
Nice.
That guy's I just ordered my turkey, too. Remember, it's Thanksgiving season. Oh, wait, you're going home.
I'm not going to be here. I'm going to have the real Thanksgiving.
I always go and order my turkey like a week before.
Nice. Do you have to?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not something you're picking up on like a random Thursday morning.
There's not like 50 big turkeys. You just grab one? No?
Mr. Scrooge. No, there's not.
My first Thanksgiving in Italy, and my only Thanksgiving in Italy, I was in Venice visiting a friend, and she was like, it's Thanksgiving. Let's go get some American food. I know a good burger place. So burgers in Venice on Thanksgiving.
I have to say, and I think you've probably had this experience too, when I make Thanksgiving dinner, Italians love it.
Of course.
When I make American breakfast, Italians love it. Like Italians, when they actually encounter most American foods, really like them. Like
they do.
But they're shocked. You're like, well, yeah, but like other people have good foods too.
Yeah, and I said this in the last episode that the Italians, the way they're perceived, and the way they're not perceived, the way they're shown. What's the other? The way they appear on social media is only for social media. They're putting on an act usually. You know, if they eat something like, this is so gross, that's an act. They're doing it because the wife is telling them, you're my Italian husband. You got to be a food purist and be an asshole about this because it gets the views. And
sure.
That's what all those Italian husband accounts are. It's just overreactions to stuff. When in reality, I know plenty of Italians who like pineapple on pizza.
Yeah.
I know plenty of Italians who like a salty breakfast. I know plenty of Italians. When I go home for Thanksgiving, my friends say, can you send me photos of all the food you're going to eat on Thanksgiving and like tell me what it all is? Because it's all interesting to them. Italians are, they get excited about a lot of American things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Thank you for the invitation. This has been super fun.
This is awesome.